There are specific wavelengths that have been documented to have the most profound effect on enhancing cellular function.
And so what specific wavelengths within that therapeutic window do is they actually break that bond between cytochrome C oxidase and nitric oxide, almost releasing it to help induce normal cellular function. At the core, that's why you get such a broad variety of benefits, is because at a cellular level, you're inducing normal function. You're inducing the normal production of ATP, which is kind of the energy currency of our cells. But the concept of saunas versus PhotoBioModulation, just two distinct therapies.
Yeah.
Mechanism of action is just distinctly different, and I think it's important. You can't have a device that does both.
You are listening to the Optimal Performance Podcast. The OPP is brought to you by Natural Stacks. Natural Stacks makes 100% natural and open source supplements designed to help you live optimal. For more information on how to build optimal mental and physical performance into your life, keep it right here listening to the OPP or go to naturalstacks.com.
Ryan Muncie is probably the smartest guy I know.
Trust me, Muncie is the nutrition guy.
Ryan Muncie's out there trying to make the world better for all of us.
The Optimal Performance Podcast is bold, edgy, creative, entertaining, and epic.
Ryan Muncie is my go-to guy.
Ryan Muncie he's the first guy I call.
He's making people's lives better. Ryan Muncie's an innovator.
All right, guys, welcome back to the OPP. Really fun episode for you today. This one was recorded at the Bulletproof Conference with Scott and Justin from Joovv. Joovv is the manufacturer of some red light PhotoBioModulation technology, specifically near and infrared light designed to help us optimize. And if you're watching this on video, then you can see right behind me, I've got my unit blasting me with some red and infrared light, red and near infrared. Stay tuned to the end of this episode and I will tell you guys my experience with the Joovv unit and how I'm using it. But for now, here's Justin and Scott on PhotoBioModulation and what it can do for us.
We've got Scott Nelson and Justin Strahan. You guys, I'll let you guys introduce Joovv and your personal bios. But here's the catch. You get 140 characters total. So your Twitter bio.
Sounds good. So as one of the co-founders of Joovv, my role is really digging into the science and initially basically floored by the research, dug into it, and came up with the design for our Joovv light, and that's it.
That was way longer than 140 characters. This is Scott. I'm actually gonna try to make that work. So.
Okay.
MedTech enthusiast, husband, father of four, and I'd say light enthusiast, I guess, at this point now. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done. All right. So I guess let's start with Justin. Tell us a little bit of the backstory, how you became interested in light.
Definitely. So my wife, Melissa, she is a health enthusiast, and not only for herself, but also for me and our 6 children. And she came to stumble across red light therapy in a salon and floored by the benefits and wanted to find a device to use at home, and came to find out there really were no products available for full body treatment at home. So came to me with my engineering background and kind of pushed me to dig into the science. And I was initially quite skeptical. But discovered that there is an overwhelming amount of clinical research, and so I started to dig into it and determine, what's really going to make this work.
So I think you guys have the classic story that our audiences all resonate with. You have the personal experience, you've got a science and a technical background. You were initially a skeptic, you saw the research, and then you saw personal benefit from somebody that you care about and love deeply. So what was the next step? Like, how did you guys get to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. I'll take that one. So Justin, with his engineering background, as he mentioned, built our first prototypes. Quickly realized that there's some key things that are really important when it comes to the science of photobiomodulation. And so early on, as we were kind of developing different devices, we sort of honed those things that we feel are pretty important, especially if you're trying to use this at home. And so initially, when we first launched, our whole goal was product market fit. Is this product going to resonate? How can we launch this as lean as possible, but yet still, fundamentally believe that our first products are legit, backed by proven science, et cetera. And so about 6 months or so into our launch, we were fortunate to build a relationship with Ben Greenfield, who sort of put us on the map in terms of using this device for testosterone
by
production.
putting you on his balls.
Exactly. But Ben's been an awesome partner, a great guy. But that honestly, from purely a business standpoint, we kind of pivoted at that point in time to try to I guess market and message the concept of photobiomodulation to the biohackers of the world, people that are into natural health, versus the traditional crowd that are interested in using this type of device just for skin benefits alone.
So let's talk about the wavelengths specifically, because before we hit record, you guys were mentioning that there's a lot of data showing that there's specific wavelengths for photobiomodulation. So I guess maybe take a step back. What is photobiomodulation, and what are the wavelengths that we need to be focused on?
Yeah, that's a great question that we commonly receive. So there are specific wavelengths that have been documented to have the most profound effect on enhancing cellular function. And the wavelengths that we use that are supported by the research are in the red and near-infrared spectrum, and what's called the therapeutic window. And the reason that this range of wavelengths is so important is they have the unique ability to penetrate human tissue. Compared to other wavelengths of the light spectrum, they have a special ability to do this. So wavelengths that are longer than 1,000 nanometers, for example, are very quickly absorbed by the moisture in our tissue. And so the resulting effect is the radiant heat. And so they're not able to penetrate to deeper tissue the same way. So the specific wavelengths that we use are in the mid 600 at 660 nanometers, as well as 850 nanometers, which is in the near infrared spectrum.
So from a consumer standpoint, as people look at different units, and we can talk about this in a little bit, maybe what makes you guys different, but is that something people should be looking at? Like whatever device they're looking at, asking that question, like what wavelength is this producing?
Absolutely, and it's something that's easily verifiable by the clinical research. And quite honestly, most companies get this right. There's a few that use wavelengths that have very little clinical support, but that's definitely something that the manufacturer should be upfront with, the wavelengths that they use, so that you can compare it to the documented studies.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, and just to add one comment with respect to wavelengths, to Justin's point, most companies do get this right, but they are critically important. And that therapeutic window that Justin mentioned is kind of in that range of 600 to about 950 or 1,000 nanometers, which is actually a pretty narrow spectrum when you look at the total visible spectrum of light. But within that therapeutic window, within that 400 nanometers of a therapeutic window, so to speak, there actually are very specific, even more narrow spectrums there as well that have been clinically proven in thousands of studies, in thousands of peer-reviewed studies, to have the most biological impact. As an example, wavelengths between about 710 and about 750 or so really do nothing. They don't activate cytochrome C oxidase at a cellular level. So they really don't do anything. So it is probably one of the critical components of any light therapeutic device is to make sure that the wavelengths that are delivered are within a very narrow spectrum of light.
All right, let's talk about some of the science. You mentioned cytochromes. Blow our listeners away with some nerd talk about what's really going on when we stand naked in front of these red lights.
Yeah, gonna go deep here. So there are some different theories as to the mechanism of action for photobiomodulation, but probably the most respected theory is this concept of activating an enzyme called cytochrome C oxidase, or CCO. Sometimes you'll see the acronym CCO used in clinical research. But during the fourth phase of cellular respiration, that enzyme, when under stress, will bind to nitric oxide, which prevents the production of ATP synthase, which is a precursor to ATP. And so what specific wavelengths within that therapeutic window do is they actually break that bond between cytochrome C oxidase and nitric oxide, almost releasing it to help induce normal cellular function during that fourth phase of respiration. And so, we just went kind of deep
that's
there.
Awesome. I love it.
So yeah, that's probably the most respected theory. There's also some other other things going on, like enhanced gene transcription because of the ROS signaling during light therapy. That's another sort of a theory as to what's going on at a cellular level. But that activation of cytochrome C oxidase, that's at the core. That's sort of what's going on with photobiomodulation.
So is that the single thing that sort of leads to this kind of, I mean, it's an impressive list of benefits from light therapy. I mean, just reading through some of them briefly, you're talking about muscle recovery, athletic performance, skin clarity, tone, texture, age spots, scars, stretch marks, wound healing, joint inflammation. Yeah. Those are all things that are manifesting from what you've just discussed.
No, absolutely. And that's why, thankfully we covered kind of the technical mechanism of action, but at the core, that's why you get such a broad variety of benefits is because at a cellular level, you're inducing normal function. You're inducing the normal production of ATP, which is kind of the energy currency of our cells. But yeah, listening to that laundry list of benefits, I would imagine most people are pretty skeptical. Like there's no way that light can do this type of thing, but all of those benefits are documented in peer-reviewed clinical studies. So, it's hard to argue when you see thousands of studies that are supporting these types of benefits. So the evidence is there, but rightfully, I can imagine that some people are pretty skeptical.
Right, and having written copy for our products with Natural Stacks, I hear the med tech in your background. I know you've dealt with the FDA a little bit because you went right to normal, healthy cell function. Like that's what you're allowed to say. I got it.
Exactly.
I know it.
We try to do our best to make sure that we're not promoting that light, like our device does this specific thing.
Right.
That we always kind of go back to the clinical evidence. Light therapy within these specific wavelengths have been proven to do X, Y, and Z.
And you have a light device that is in those
wavelengths. Yep. Exactly.
Perfect. So speaking of your device, how is your device different from some of the other things on the market?
I'll take that one. The main way that we've really tried to distinguish ourselves from the other players in the space, it comes down to the intensity of the light. So wavelengths are obviously important, but the intensity or irradiance of the light is arguably the most important factor to having an effective device. And the reason why that is it takes a substantial amount of energy to reach deeper tissue. So, there's a lot of products in the market that would have benefits for skin health benefits, boosting collagen production, reducing wrinkles over a period of time. I would argue that there are very few, if any, competitors to what we deliver that are as effective at deeper tissue healing. So what's going to help with muscle recovery, reducing joint pain, helping with other deeper tissues, even with glands and organs, as has been shown in the research. So for those types of benefits, documented studies have shown that it can take 60 joules per square centimeter of energy delivered. And that's something that we deliver with our devices in just a 10-minute session. If the term for the intensity is called irradiance, so that's definitely something that you should be, the manufacturers of any legitimate device should be upfront with, and that the units of that are in milliwatts per square centimeter. That's something you'll see throughout the clinical research as well. And our devices are delivering 100 milliwatts per square centimeter at the treatment distance, which equates to about 6 joules per minute.
Okay.
And just to add one more thing to that, Ryan, I know Natural Stacks is big on like being, providing transparent information about your products. That's one of our big things too, and that's why we really try to push the whole irradiance number, because unfortunately, a lot of manufacturers they don't disclose that, and whether it's intentional or not, we kind of think it's probably not, or we probably think it is intentional. But I mean, it's the analogy is literally like buying a car and the manufacturer not telling you the horsepower of the engine. I mean, irradiance is the thing that you need to know in order to determine what the joules of energy that you're receiving from the device. So it's critically important, and something that if you're interested in this space and want to move forward with a device, definitely ask for that metric.
Yeah, I mean that was going to be my follow up to that. Is I know a lot of our listeners are aware of the benefits of light therapy and maybe shopping or trying to make a decision on what light unit they want to get at home. So that was going to be my question in the vein of open source and transparency. What number do they need to look for? And I think you answered that. So you're looking at the milliwatts per centimeter, and so for you guys the distance is 6 inches for the Like that's the treatment distance?
That's correct. That's our recommended treatment for deeper tissue healing. So you're able to get 6 joules a minute at that distance. So at a further distance, the intensity goes down the further away you get from the device. So you can certainly get benefits.
You just have to stay longer.
Yeah, it just takes a longer time period to get the same amount of total energy per square centimeter.
Okay. Excellent. I've been hanging out at your booth quite a bit this weekend, and I've heard the sauna question a lot. And I think I think if people were paying really close attention, you kind of hit the answer earlier where you were talking about those kind of far infrared wavelengths are absorbed by the moisture in our skin. So is that why you would want far infrared for sauna?
Exactly, that's correct. So with those far infrared wavelengths, typically longer than 3,000 nanometers, those are absorbed very quickly by the moisture in our tissues. So that's why you feel it as radiant heat, and they're very effective for that purpose, for sauna therapy, where you want to induce heat shock proteins and raise the body temperature. You get the cardiovascular benefits, and those, have their own set of documentation for, the research there. It's just totally separate than photobiomodulation. The easy way I like to describe that to people in a way that they can kind of visualize is if you're outside on a hot sunny day and you feel that intense sunlight, and then a cloud goes over, you immediately notice it's like somebody flipped a switch, and the heat that what you were feeling in your body is suddenly cut way down. The visible light and the UV spectrum is affected very little by those clouds, but you notice the far infrared, those wavelengths have been, for the vast majority of that energy, has been absorbed by the moisture in the cloud.
That's a great analogy. It reminds me of the Eclipse that we just had, where I was in Virginia Beach, we were at like 80 or 90%. So it was like a 90, 95 degree day. And during that 30-minute, 40-minute period, the temperature went down to like 80. It was extremely comfortable, but you still can't look directly at it.
Exactly.
So, okay.
And just one other thing that I think it's important relative to the concept of saunas versus photobiomodulation. Just 2 distinct therapies.
Yeah.
Mechanism of action is just distinctly different, and I think it's important. You can't have a device that does both, right? They're 2 different. So if you have if you're using like a near infrared heat lamp, for example, those can be halfway decent for generating heat, for the purposes of a sauna, but they're going to be really poor for the purposes of photobiomodulation, just because it's a really inefficient heat source, and the percentages of wavelengths that are optimal, you're not really going to find those in a near infrared heat lamp. So just think of it as like just 2 distinct therapies.
So that's probably why somebody like Ben Greenfield has a sauna and then put his own red lights in it.
Yeah, correctly. Yeah, just two distinct. And I think Ben will oftentimes, he loves using a sauna. I think he's mentioned that several times, as kind of his morning routine. And he'll often take like our device, and use it while he's working, at a standing desk. He'll flip it on, get some light therapy treatment, while he pounds out some emails or whatever he's doing, shining it on his balls. But yeah, they're two sort of distinct, separate therapies. Both have been clinically been documented clinically to work well. Just two different concepts.
Yeah, and I think you guys have done a very good job of being diplomatic and explaining that to people this weekend. So I'm glad we were able to kind of cover that on the show for our listeners. You talked about the areas that Ben has shared with the world where he uses it. Talk about treatment areas.
Yeah, so that's another sort of probably area that we've tried to optimize with our devices. When we were first, when Justin was first building out some of the prototypes, what's pretty prevalent in the marketplaces are little handheld devices that theoretically can work as long as they're delivering the right wavelengths with a solid irradiance. They do work. It's just they're small.
And that's my question. As soon as you started talking about those, with what we had just said about irradiance, can those things really generate enough to be effective?
Well, technically, yes. So especially for skin benefits, those devices, they can be effective because it doesn't take a very high dosage.
Okay.
But any device that's going to be used directly on the skin is going to have to be much lower, have a much lower irradiance or intensity of light because you're trapping the heat from the LEDs right against the body. So your skin can't breathe, the LEDs can't breathe. So it's going to have to be much lower power, typically in the 10 to 20 milliwatts per square centimeter. So, though a lot of times you'll see with those devices a 10 to 20 minute treatment per treatment area, even just for skin benefits. Whereas, with our device at, roughly 5 to 6 times the intensity, it's, obviously much more effective for deeper tissue healing.
Yeah, so talk about the best practices with your device.
No, great question. Really the best practices really come down to how you can implement it as part of your daily routine. So as with any photobiomodulation therapy, it's something ideally that you do daily. We do have people that do it multiple times a day, but it's definitely something that consistency is critical to seeing the long-term benefits. While you certainly can have reduction in pain or inflammation from a single treatment, for overall cellular function, you're definitely better off to have a daily or consistent treatment.
It's a good thing this isn't live.
Ryan Muncy, everyone. Star of the conference.
Yeah. So, all right, I will say this on the show because this just blows my mind. You guys are amazing. And anytime you see me, please come up and talk to me. I love being able to do that. I love being able to do what I do and share that with you guys. But
on that note, that is really cool. I mean,
right.
Obviously, it's a demonstration of the content that you guys put out. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Love it. Love seeing it.
But yesterday, Rick Rubin was here, and he's walking through, and nobody is stopping him. Of course, I have to get a picture with him and put it on Instagram or something. But it took us a long time to get to him and stop him because, I kept getting stopped and people were talking to me. And I just looked over at him and I'm like, how weird is this? Like, nobody even knows that's Rick Rubin. Nobody's talking to him. Like, there's something wrong here, but no, it's cool. So yeah, guys, come to the Bulletproof Conference next year and you'll see Rick Rubin because he's here every year.
And you'll see Ryan Muncy.
Yeah, but really Rick Rubin. All right, so this is something I mentioned this to you guys when I first saw you. So I've been playing with the unit at home, and we'll talk about how I've been doing it. I'm curious to hear how you guys work it into your daily practice. But I noticed right away when I plugged it in, turned it on, that about half the lights weren't on. And I was thinking about it as I was standing in front of it. And I told you that I kind of had that light bulb moment where it's like, oh, the ones that I can't see are the ones that are not in the visible spectrum. So they're actually on, you just can't see them. But you guys have different configurations for your products as well.
Correct. We've got 3 different sizes, and each size is you can utilize. Or each size comes with 3 different wavelength configurations as well. So all red light at 660 nanometers. All near infrared or all IRA wavelengths at 850 nanometers, or a 50-50 configuration of both. And that latter configuration it is by far and away our most popular configuration, because if someone's a believer, has come to the conclusion that light therapy is beneficial, and they make the investment in a device, they want a lot of utility out of it. And with that combination configuration of both red and near infrared, you get a lot of utility, whether you're looking for enhanced skin benefits, which I think most people kind of like that, as well as deeper tissue treatments as well, muscle recovery, joint pain relief, etc. So that dual configuration is definitely our most popular.
All right, cool. How are you guys using it on a daily basis?
Well, I'll start first since I have the mic. I'll pass it to Justin. But like Justin mentioned before, fundamentally, trying to fit it into your daily routine is optimal. And so I personally use it in the morning just because that tends to fit well into my daily routine. Now, if I'm trying to treat something specifically, if I've got some torn up hamstrings from too many deadlifts the day before, or I tweaked my knee or something, I may try to fit in a secondary treatment towards the end of the day. But typically I use it in the morning. So
you are, or you can target specific areas more so than just like a daily full body treatment.
Correct. Yeah. And we generally speaking for prophylactic reasons or proactive health, we recommend at a distance of, standing or sitting at about 6 inches away from our device. and going for about 8 to 10 minutes. As Justin mentioned before, our devices at that distance will deliver about 6 joules of energy. So a 10-minute treatment is going to, you're going to receive about 60 joules of energy, which is definitely clinically significant.
Right.
So generally speaking, that's what we recommend. Now, if you've got something specific that you're trying to treat, fitting in another session is probably ideal versus going really long in one session. That's probably clinically a little bit superior than just a really prolonged session.
Okay.
So that's why I would probably recommend splitting those up if you're going to do multiple sessions per day.
Perfect.
Yeah, I would say I tend to do treatments more in the evening. I find that it just relaxes me, helps me sleep better, kind of recover from the stress of the day. That being said, particularly if it's a cloudy or rainy day, I definitely enjoy a morning session. So it kind of depends on what's going on that day, but I would tend to do more evening treatments. So as you can imagine, it really just kind of depends on your own personal preference and what fits in your schedule and what you personally enjoy.
And that's cool too, because it's like you bring an element of biohacking to it, because if you understand light and when you need light, want light, and how it works, you can use this at different times for different things on different days.
Yeah, exactly. And I know, there's going to be some people in your audience that really want to kind of hack and play with this. But just to add to that, morning or evening is probably ideal, just because that mimics the natural sunrise and sunset with the natural sunlight. So not to say that using it midday, if that's the best time for you to use light therapy on a daily basis, fit it in midday. But if you're really trying to optimize performance, morning and or evening is probably ideal.
Perfect. What's the most inspiring story that you guys have heard from people using the technology?
That's a great question. It's kind of tough to answer because we get new reviews every week.
And you probably can't even use half of them. Because I know how it is. We have people come up and tell us things, and we can't put it on the site because of disease claims or states or things like that, right?
I will tell you a really cool one that we got here last week, though. There's a gal that bought a light for her 82-year-old mother, and she gave us just a glowing review, and it was really cool to see because you could just sense the enthusiasm in the review that she left, and she said her mother will not miss a day of treatment with her Joovv light, and she just loves the energy that she has. And she told her daughter of all the kind of biohacks or health things that she has available. She said she could live without all of them if it meant she could keep her Joovv light. So that was a pretty cool one.
That's great.
And just one other thing, I mean, we do post some reviews on our site. So if someone doesn't want to necessarily go really technical, but is just interested in kind of hearing from customers in their own words what they have to say about after experiencing light, the reviews on our site are pretty cool. But I think what's just to answer your question, Ryan, I think what's interesting is here at the conference, since we're here, and I'll give Eric Shad a call out here. He's a total biohacker enthusiast, but a really down-to-earth, rational guy, but a science nerd. He loves this stuff. He digs into the science. And I remember having multiple conversations with him kind of over the course, probably 6 months ago, multiple conversations over the course of a couple months. I saw him here for the first time, after corresponding with him so much, and loves it. Yeah. And he dug in. He was, he asked all the right questions and really dug in. It's just really cool to see that, not that he was skeptical, but really knee deep in the research, and after consistently using the device, has seen really, really good results. So it's just refreshing to kind of see that and get to meet someone a customer that did their diligence and is satisfied with the results.
Well, speaking of your interactions with people at the conference, I mean, what are some misconceptions that you see people bringing or having about light and PhotoBioModulation? Sure,
and I think we covered two. I mean, your two questions before about the differences between saunas and PhotoBioModulation. I think again, just to hit that point home. Just two really distinct therapies. Both are valuable, on their own merits. But you can't have a device that does both well, right? So I think that's just really important, and something that we'll, as a company, we're going to, trying to continue to educate people on, is that they're just two distinctly different therapies. So I think that's we discussed it already probably in detail, but just remembering that they're two totally different mechanisms of action. Mm-hmm. It's equivalent to consuming glutamine and creatine. Just they're different. They're different altogether.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think that's just really important to mention.
Yeah, just to tag on to that, some of the questions that we get are kind of a result of the marketing hype that they're being fed from different companies in the market. So I would just, definitely keep coming back to the wavelengths and the irradiance or intensity of the light. Really, everything else other than that is kind of just marketing hype that you can kind of just cut through all that and ask them what are the wavelengths and what's the intensity.
All right, and just to reiterate, the wavelengths, 660, 850, or 50-50 split of both, that's what you guys are using. And then the irradiance is over 100 milliwatts per centimeter, and then total joules would be 60. Is that kind of the goal that you're going for?
Exactly, and that's
Okay.
for the optimal health, deep tissue treatment.
Okay, perfect. Where can our listeners get more of you guys?
Definitely. If you go to our website, joovv.com, that's JOOVV.com, we have a Learn tab that you can dive into the science as deep as you'd like. We got some very interesting articles that delve into the science of photobiomodulation, comparing them to saunas, comparing them to infrared heat lamps, comparing them to sunlight. So those are some things that I think your listeners would find beneficial. And as Scott mentioned, the reviews, that's probably the funnest part of what we're doing today is the results that our customers are getting in their own words. So definitely check out those two things. One other thing I'll quick mention that we do have a 60-day money-back guarantee as well as a 2-year warranty. So we really try to offer service and a peace of mind that I think is difficult to find in the marketplace. So something else to add there too, as well as we just launched some financing options. So definitely check that out as well.
Okay. And for you guys listening, we'll put a link to that on the blog post with show notes for that. It'll be naturalstacks.com/Joovv, JOOVV. Before we let you guys go, a couple more questions. Where do you see the future of this going? That you can talk about now.
Well, it's interesting. So Justin's an engineer. We kind of chatted before the conversation. I spent my entire career in the medical device space with companies like Medtronic and Boston Scientific. And me personally, after when we first started, building the first prototypes, I was fascinated by how much clinical data there is with respect to photobiomodulation. And I most of my time has been spent in the cardiovascular space, and so I'd like to think I'm halfway decent at recognizing a therapeutic arena, but it is a substantial amount of evidence. And so that was one of the first questions to kind of come full circle on this that we asked Dr. Michael Hamlin, who's a PhD at Harvard, runs his own photomedicine lab. We asked him the same question, why does it seem like there's still a lack of awareness despite the overabundance of clinical data? And his roundabout answer was, I think we're getting there. And he thought that within the next 5 to 10 years, there'll be a significant percentage of the population that has a light therapy device in their own home, just because the evidence is too hard to ignore. And so I do think, over time if we do a good job of continuing to educate the marketplace, I think, just the concept of how our bodies metabolize light, that'll become a lot more prevalent.
You guys do a great job of educating, and for you guys listening, check out the blogs and the information that is available on the Joovv website. So that was something I did as soon as we got into contact, was to go there and look, and I told you it was very well done. So, all right, final question. Top 3 tips to live optimal. And let's go, we'll alternate back and forth. 1, 1, 2, 2.
So I would probably say, and this is probably a little bit more biased to what I'm interested in right now, but I would say tip number 1 would be as much as you can, try to get a healthy dose of natural sunlight in the morning, primarily to reset your circadian rhythm.
I'll go with the amazing benefits from the Earth's gravitational field. So it's most people are aware of grounding, but if you haven't heard of the concept of the Earth's magnetic field and its impact on your cellular function, definitely look into that. It's pretty incredible.
So tip number 2. I think fasting. There's obviously been a fair amount of education recently around fasting. Dr. Rhonda Patrick has done a great job. Art Devaney, I know, speaks to this quite a bit. But I've for a while now practiced or tried to practice as I can intermittent fasting. Sometimes it's kind of difficult with kids, but try to squeeze in that feeding window within 6 hours. But I personally want to toy around more with like prolonged fasts, either on a monthly or quarterly basis. I've heard Tim Ferriss mention that several times, and other kind of other folks that I respect. Practice prolonged fasting,
right.
And so that's something that I personally kind of want to play around with more often.
We'll follow up on that one with you. So you mentioned the eating window, and I get so many questions. I think people get, tripped up with the eating window a lot, where people are what do I do if I'm hungry, after this, or how do you view it, and then I'll tell you how I do as well. But
in dealing with the sort of the hunger pains, or
or just like how do you view the eating window, and you mentioned trying to keep it to 6 hours, but
right. Yeah. So I mean, so like on a pragmatic basis, what that looks like for me personally is typically I'll have my first meal of the day, usually around 1 o'clock or so, and then try to eat by 6 or finish up like a dinner so it's usually just 2 meals,
right.
A dinner at like 6 or 7. Sometimes there's some, I'll snack a little bit, try to as healthy as possible in between the two. But it's not like I don't have like a bulletproof coffee in the morning. I don't really consider that fasting. I'll have coffee for sure, but not
black.
Yeah, it's black. Yeah, there's nothing added to it. So
that's exactly what I do too.
Yeah. So I think if you're consuming butter or something like, that's a macronutrient.
Right.
I think that probably interrupts the fasting window. So that's kind of my take on that. Yeah,
I agree. And I look at my windows. I don't really worry about how long it is on any given day. It's just, some days it may be, we may be here at a conference and I might get a snack because I'm starving, and then I may not eat again until we leave. So maybe on a day like today, my window is 8 hours. Maybe at home, it's 2 hours one day, and then the next day it's 4 or 6, but it's flexible.
Sure.
But my goal on any given day is to keep it as small as possible.
Sure.
Which gives you the, if you look at if you zoom out and you look at the month and you see all of these big spaces of fasting.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people get so tripped up, is that it has to start at the exact same time every day. It has to end at the exact same time. And then it just becomes this thing that, because one of the draws for fasting for me was the flexibility. And it allows you to just live life.
Right.
And you're not worried about eating. And then when you get so rigid about it having to start or stop at the exact same time, it defeats that purpose.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's fantastic evidence. Yeah. And sometimes I think we make it more difficult than it really is, but we should enjoy kind of the flexibility that something like that, lends itself to. So,
right.
Yeah.
All right, Justin, tip number 2.
Tip number 2, we've talked a lot about light. So at the cellular level, there's so many things that are stressing your cells in terms of EMFs, blue light, toxin, stress. So all these things, all these stressors, and getting natural light and enhancing that with supplementing that with a PhotoBioModulation device is a great way to recharge your cells.
Okay.
So tip number 3, it's not necessarily, we've been talking about sort of like physiological things, but this is a little bit more kind of emotional or psychological. So just really trying to practice gratitude more consistently. That's something that it seems like I personally go in and out of that, and I just feel like there's just a lot of value in me personally, just practicing even simple gratitude on a daily basis, and allowing that to sort of reset your mind, because I tend to be, me personally, a little bit hard charging, pretty intense, and go fast, break things, so to speak. So just practicing gratitude, I think, is something that if you want to call it a hack per se, but a tip that I'm doing more of these days.
Okay.
All right, tip number 3, that would be look for ways to reduce stress on your body. So most of us have heard about the dangers of EMFs, for example. Take a stock, look around you. What are some things that you can do to avoid the clear hazards that have been identified? Whether it's a cell phone, carrying that on your body, clearly that's not a good idea. Put that in airplane mode when you have to have it on you, or set it at a little bit of ways from you, so you're not exposing yourself to those dangers. Wi-Fi, clearly that's something you can turn off at night. So simple tips like that, you can really reduce some of the hazards and stressors that you're putting on your body and cells on a daily basis.
All right, I like it. I'm laughing because I unplugged the Wi-Fi at my Airbnb the other night, and I didn't realize that it was connected to like the one next door. So I biohacked their health for them.
That's right. Did you leave a thank you note for that? Or you're welcome note. I said you're welcome note. Yeah.
And I'm sorry / you're welcome. I was like, I turned it back on the next morning because I was gone. So.
They probably don't. They never.
They probably
knew.
never even knew. Yeah.
Never knew they had like the best night's sleep of their life.
Right. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being on the show. For our listeners, go to naturalstacks.com/Joovv, and you'll be able to see the blog post. We'll put links to some of the studies to the Joovv website. All the things that you want to follow up with will be there. Go to iTunes, leave us a review. Don't have one to read for you today because we are recording these at the Bulletproof Conference, but when we read your review on the air, we will get you a little care package as a thank you. And finally, share the OPP with the people that you know who will benefit from and enjoy the things that we're talking about. That's how we grow this thing and help more people. So thank you guys for listening. Justin, Scott, thank you guys for being here.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
All right, guys, I promised you at the end of this thing, I would let you know what my experience has been like with the Joovv unit and how I'm using it. So first of all, how am I using it? As you heard in this episode, it's about a 10 to 12 minute use or exposure time to get the benefit that we're looking for from the specific Joovv unit based on the intensity and the energy put out by this specific unit. Because it is red light, I am trying to match my usage to the natural time of day where we would see red light, meaning an hour within sunrise and an hour before sunset. So I'm trying not to use it outside of those windows. I don't use it midday. I don't use it before sunrise. I don't use it after dark. I don't know if there's any research that says I shouldn't use it outside of sunrise and sunset. But like I said, I'm just trying to match my increased red light exposure to the natural times of day where we would see it. We're recording this in late October. So, the seasons are changing. Daylight is changing. We're about to hit daylight saving times actually this coming weekend. So, it's really important to me that we try to match and optimize our circadian rhythm. So I'm really paying close attention to, my exposure to light and how it impacts my health, my sleep cycles, and my biological clock. The other thing that I do for PhotoBioModulation is use the human charger. It is great for jet lag, but I love it during the winter months when we move into daylight savings time. So from November to, March, when we spring forward again with our clocks, I use the human charger at about 10 to 15 minutes before sunset. The reason I do this is that when the sun goes down early, let's say it goes down at 5 p.m., then I would start to feel sleepy around, say, 8 p.m. And if I don't go to bed right then I'm secreting extra cortisol to kind of get a second wind and stay awake until I may go to bed at, 9:30, 10:30, 11 o'clock, something like that. So what I will do is use the human charger right before sunset to sort of give myself a non-caffeine energy boost and, if you will, trick my body into thinking that it's not quite time to wind down. Then what I've noticed is that I will start to wind down a little bit later than if I don't use it. So somewhere in that 9:30, 10 o'clock range, and then I can fall asleep or go to sleep without having to have, had that cortisol boost, which we don't want. If you know about the cortisol cycle, we want it to be at its lowest right before we go to bed. So we don't want that little secondary peak between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. And that's something that I've noticed. I started doing this last year and it made a big difference for me. I don't have science behind that. It's just personal experience. So if you guys want to try it, play with that kind of stuff, I'd love to hear how it works for you and what you think about that. So again, I'm using the Joovv unit in the morning within 30 minutes of waking up. It's part of my morning routine. There are some days where I don't feel like doing it first thing in the morning, so I will do it at night. I'm not married to my morning routine. This is something I've talked about before. My morning routine should be something that sets me up for success for any given day. It's not something that I have to follow like a checklist as if, skipping something on that thing is going to make me less of a person on that day. And I caution everyone against, kind of falling in love or being married to that morning routine as if it is something that holds power outside of you. So, like I said, if I don't feel like doing it, I don't. Most of the time I do it first thing in the morning. If I don't, I get it done at night, sometime around sunset. My experience, it definitely warms me up. I can feel it right now. I'm actually sweating a little bit, and I'm not even as close to it as I normally am. I'm about 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet away from it right now, and I can feel the warmth and the heat from it, which is interesting because, as you just listened on the show, it's not really designed to be a heat source like a sauna, but it does provide, it's energy. These are energy waves, and, they will warm you up. So experience, it's honestly, I do feel somewhat energized. I feel sort of like a clean boost, but it's not something like drinking coffee and you feel that kind of energy. It is one of those things, as you heard, that, the more you use it, the more the effects compound. I have not been using it long enough to be able to say it's cleared up my skin or it's boosted my testosterone or anything like that. But I will say that when I use it, I feel warmer, and I feel sort of energized, I guess maybe placebo effect, but I feel energized at the cellular level. It feels like a real boost. I feel, especially in the morning, if I do it first thing in the morning, I feel that boost. I feel, awake and alive. So love to hear what you guys think. If you've used any kind of red light photobiomodulation, post on social media, repost this podcast, tag us, let me know what you think. And as always, guys, thank you so much for listening to the OPP. Leave us a review. Go to naturalstacks.com. You'll be able to find the blog post for this and share the OPP with the people in your life who will benefit from and enjoy the things that we're talking about here. And don't forget, if you want to get your own Joovv unit, code is OPP, and I believe you will save $25 on a unit. So OPP is the code if you want to get your own Joovv unit. Talk to you guys next week.